Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create faux amazonite with polymer clay. Now this is a real piece and is what I'm going to be using to get the correct colours, and the closest colour is this colour of alcohol ink. Now you can mess around with different brands and different colours if you want, but if you're going to copy this recipe, I highly recommend this one. This one works very well. Now you're also going to need some translucent polymer clay. I've rolled out a piece of Primo translucent here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut it in half, and it doesn't really matter how thick it is, you just want two pieces of translucent. This was rolled out to roughly 1 millimeter thick. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour one with twice as many drops of ink because I want some variation in my stone. So let's see, how many was that? Let's make that easier by just making it 12, and then I'll put 6 on this one. So roughly the same amount of clay with two different lots of alcohol ink. Alright. Okay, and we could leave it at that, but to make a slight difference as well, I'm actually going to take this colour of alcohol ink, that being turquoise, and I'm going to add 6 of that to the lighter one here. So this one's going to be a little more blue and this one's going to be a little more green, and they're both going to be the same strength roughly when it comes to colour. So then you want to allow that ink to dry, and then you're going to mix the ink into the clay, colouring it. Now, quick thing, you can colour the translucent with normal polymer clay. You don't have to use alcohol ink if you want, just use a tiny amount of regular clay to colour it. But if you have the alcohol ink, I recommend using that because the alcohol ink is completely translucent and so therefore won't mess with the translucency of your translucent clay, whereas if you use regular coloured clay to colour it, you want to use it as small amounts as possible because it will decrease the translucency. Okay, and there we go. Then once it is completely dry, you're going to take that and you're going to mix that all together. And if it is completely dry and you're not getting any residue on your fingers, you can pop that through your pasta machine. Though I do recommend for the first 3 to 4 rolls actually just using your rolling pin to do it, because that way you can make sure that there isn't any wet spots, because those can make a mess of your pasta machine, and generally it's just worth it to do the first couple of rolls to incorporate the ink into the clay and then continue mixing through the pasta machine. It just makes less mess. And then you would repeat the same with this colour. Okay, and there we go. This is the one with the extra blue in it, and this is the one that is just the one colour. So there's not a ton of difference, but you will see more difference between the two colours once it has baked. Then you're going to take both of them and you're just going to fold them a couple of times so that you end up with a block of clay rather than just a sheet. And then I'm going to chop that all up. Okay, and the clay will be quite sticky once you've mixed the alcohol ink in. So if at any point during this process you find that it's too sticky and everything's clumping together and causing problems, you can always pop it into the freezer to firm it up, and that should solve the problem. But once you've got those two into blocks, just take your blade and just chop that up like so. And at this point, this is where it might start sticking together, so if you have any problems, again, you can pop it in the freezer. But this should be fine. Okay, and once you've got them chopped up a little bit, then I would recommend adding the paint. This is going to be a little messy, but I actually want to chop the paint into the clay because it will create some cool streak effects. So I'm going to be using pearl white polymer clay, pearl white acrylic paint rather than white paint, because if you look at the stone, it does have kind of a pearlescent quality to it rather than just plain white veins. So I do recommend working with at least a little bit of pearl white paint. You could combine the pearl white paint with just regular paint if you wanted to, but yeah. And then take that and continue chopping your pieces, and this will also help them stay separate from one another as well. And just keep going until that paint has been properly distributed throughout all the pieces. Okay, and there we go. And I've given them a bit of time to dry. It's not completely dry yet, but what you want to do now is just take all those pieces, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop them to the side, and they are still a bit sticky, but that's okay. And I'm just going to clean away all this extra paint. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to actually use my blade to scrape it up off the tile's surface. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a build-up on the blade, and I actually want to keep that. So that's why I'm showing this bit. Just get as much of that off as you can, bring this back over, and then just pop that in. And you can skip that if you want, but it's going to create the appearance of some thicker veins. And then I'm going to chop it in to a surface, like so. There we go. Okay, then once I've done that, I'm going to let this dry completely. Okay, and I just popped them off to the side on a piece of paper. And it's still a little sticky, but it should be okay to pop together. So just take that and squish that all together, like so. And just pick those pieces all up off the piece of paper and just bond everything together. Okay, there we go. And now you can see that there's not a huge covering of paint. If you wanted the veins in the finished piece to be a little more pronounced, you could always give it a coat of white paint after the pearl white, or even mix white paint into the pearl white paint when you apply it. But I want the veins to be a little softer than what I usually make them with this technique, because again, that's how it appears in the stone. Right, and then that's all together. I'm going to go clean off my hands. Okay, then I'm going to select a nice sharp flexible blade, and I'm going to cut into the piece. And there we go, you can see how that looks, and it's got a really fantastic shine to it. As you can see, it's very similar in colour. The translucent will darken once it's baked, so it should darken down to this colour. Right, then you're going to cut out all those slices, and I would make the slices roughly a millimetre thick, because I am actually going to stretch them out a little, because if you recall back to the stone that I just showed, it isn't perfectly in these kind of chunky pieces. It's got a little bit more of a softer marble going on, so I am going to roll these out. And to do that, I'm just going to pop them together like so. I must say that pearl white looks really quite nice. Okay, just stick it all together like so. And I actually need to pop it together like that. There we go. Alright. There we go. Then I'll use a piece of paper first to stick everything together, and then I'm probably going to roll it out. Actually, yep. Okay, and that should be a fairly quick process. Then I'm going to grab a roller, and I'm going to roll over the surface, stretching this out. And you could put it through your pasta machine as well. Also, every once in a while clean your roller, because there's probably going to be some stuff coming up off the clay, and you don't really want to carry that over. So just roll a couple of times and then clean, and then continue that process, flattening it down so that you stretch everything out. Okay, and there we go. Then I've got it on a piece of paper ready to bake when I cut out my pieces. I am actually just going to lift that off because I did roll it on the piece of paper and sometimes it can get stuck. So let me just lift that off actually. Okay, there we go. Just wanted to show you the back as well. This is going to need to get sanded because it's a little messy, but the front looks quite good. Now, I'm not sure if the camera's going to be able to see there, but it is quite translucent, which is very nice. Now I'm going to place it on that piece of paper and I'm going to give it a very quick burnish just to stick it back down a little bit, and then we're going to cut our pieces off from there. And so that I have a nice domed finish on the pieces, I am actually going to use a little bit of plastic wrap. Just going to place that down on top, trying to keep it as smooth as possible. Okay, and what this does is it creates a resistance for when you're putting the cutter down. That way the edges of the cutter actually dome the piece. If you want a nice straight edge, then avoid the plastic wrap. Now I've got an oval cutter and a circle donut cutter, and I'm going to actually start with this one. I'm going to choose a nice spot, and I'm actually going to cut right from the middle. I only want one piece of this, then I will cut out 2 oval pieces, and then I'm going to make some studs. Okay, just take that and cut straight down like so. Okay, and if it's a little hard to press down, what you can do is you can grab your acrylic roller and just roll across the surface, and this will actually apply quite a bit of pressure and give it a nice clean cut. And now I'm going to keep that there just so that it doesn't distort anything, and I'm going to cut out my oval piece, and I'm going to use my fingers again, press down, okay, and lift up, and there you can see how that looks. And I'm going to cut out another piece over here, and making sure this stays down. Okay, and that should do. Then I'm going to lift all those up and lift up the plastic wrap. And I don't want it to lift up, so let me get that to, there we go. Okay, there we go. Alright, then I might need to press down again to get a completely clean cut, and it may stick in the cutter. If it does, that's not a problem because it's not that stuck. Just lift it out like so, then just tap around the edges. Okay, and hopefully you can see there how it's got a nice dome. Okay, there we go. Now, you could cut out more pieces from this if you wanted to, but I have got the number that I want. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take these kind of scrappy pieces and I'm going to make studs from it. So imagine you've cut out as many pieces as you can from here, and then you're left with the leftover pieces. So I'll put these to the side, and we have those little middle bits from the pieces over here. You can take those as well. Now I'm just going to take that and squish that all together, and this I'm going to put to the side so that it's out of the way and not going to get bumped at all. Okay, and then I'm going to take this, which is our little piece of scraps, and I'm going to bring over the mould that I'm going to use, which is this nice clamshell shape, and I'm going to cut this in half, and you're still going to have the images, or a nice clean vein effect anyway. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to press that in, and I'll take this other one and also press that in, and I only want a small amount of clay. I don't want to do too much clay, so I always start with a small amount, and then if I need to add more then I will. And this is generally what I will do with any leftover pieces. from this technique, I will make some nice stud pieces. Okay, and then just press that all the way up to the edges of the mold. If you can make it so that you have the exact right amount of clay, then you don't have to worry about shaving it. I have a little too much clay in here, so what you would do is you would take a firm blade, preferably, and then just shave across the surface like so, cleaning it up, and then press it back into place. And that will just about do. Then I'm going to grab my stud, or earring stud anyway, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to press that into the clay while it's in the mold still. Then take that piece that was shaved off, just take a little bit, roll it into a donut, and pop that over the top of your loop. And then I'll take a rag, like for instance a baby wipe, and press that down into place. And what that does is it traps the ear wire, or stud, whatever you call it, inside the clay, which leaves it with a very secure connection to the clay. And it also means that you don't have to do multiple bakes, and it's just a very nice way to finish everything off. And just make sure it's in there, make sure you're happy with that, and then you can lift that out of the mold like so. And there you go, you've got yourself a really cute little mold. And then you would repeat for the other earring. Okay, then I've got those two, and I've just popped them on a piece of paper in the meantime, but I don't really want to bake them like that because they won't bake nicely. So I've got a little pot of cornstarch here, and just tap it to kind of get everything flattened out. But what you can do is then take this and place it stud side down in there, and that's a nice way to bake it so that you don't end up flattening the front image. Just place that down, and there we go. And that cornstarch washes off pretty well. So just pop that in there, and that's how I generally will bake my pieces. And as for these ones over here, I'm just going to bake them on the piece of paper so that they end up with a smooth back. And then once they're baked, they're going to need a fair bit of sanding, because I like to bring these up to a nice high shine. But yeah, bake these for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and then once they're baked, we'll sand them as I said and give them a buff. Okay, and here they are out of the oven. Now, something I do want to just point out before I move on to the next step is to bear in mind how thick your pieces are when you make them, because I'm not sure if the camera can tell the difference here, but these are a fair bit thicker than this one because they were put into a mold, whereas this is about 1 millimeter thick, and it will affect the colour of your pieces. This is a fair bit greener than these ones, and that is just because of the depth of the piece. The colour mounts up depending on how thick it is. The thicker it is, the stronger the colour is going to be. This one, because the light is shining through it quite a bit, is going to have a slightly yellow tint. So if you find that something is a little bit of the wrong colour, test out the different thicknesses on the piece, because you'll find that the colour difference is quite significant. Also, another thing I just want to show is the colour change when you bake it. So you can see there how these are much closer to this colour because of the thickness, and then when it bakes, the translucency is going to increase, and so the thinner it is, the bigger the colour difference is going to be. But anyway, with that out of the way, these ones are going to put to the side. They will get varnished in a minute, but for these ones I want to sand them, and I have already sanded these two. They haven't even been buffed yet, this is just them sanded. And this is the one that needs to still be sanded. And I'm going to bring over some polishing papers. They're a fantastic way to get from quite a matte finish to a high shine. Now I'm going to start with the 400 grit, which is this green one over here. And I'm just going to go through the grits, starting from the 400, and it goes all the way up to the white, which is a 8000. And with just that, you should be able to get them to a nice satin finish. And then, once that is done, I'm going to buff the top part, and then what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over because the back also looks really nice. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put resin on the back so we've got double-sided pieces. Okay, and here is how that looks once it's finished being sanded. And you could essentially leave it just like that. You don't even need to buff it, though buffing will give it an even shinier finish. And so to do that, I'm going to be using a rotary tool with a little cotton buffing wheel on the end, and this makes a little bit of noise. I'm just going to take Okay, and there we go, and that will take it to a glossy finish. So you can see there the difference. These are nice, but this one, it will just look fantastic. But yeah, now I'm going to buff the other two pieces, and I might actually skip the varnish on these and just give them a buff. It will bring up a little bit of the pattern without the tacky finish that a varnish would give. Okay, and here is how these look. You can see they've got just a light sheen to bring out that pattern, but not too much. And these ones have now a glassy finish to them, which is fantastic. And you could repeat the same on the back if you wanted to, but as I said, I'm going to apply resin to that now. So I'm going to bring over a little silicone mat and place these with the shiny side down. There we go. And then I'm going to apply resin to them. And the resin I'm using is this resin over here. And just open that up. And you just want a little bit, you don't need too much. And you put this under a UV light for about 15 minutes to cure that resin completely. You could also apply varnish if you wanted to, but I think resin generally looks the best in this case, just because it's going to give a really glossy effect. And just apply a little bit, you don't need a whole bunch. Okay, and then just distribute that around, pulling it all the way to the edges. And if you need more, you can always add more, but I like to work with less than I need, that way you don't risk it spilling over the edges. And then, as I said, you put that under the UV light for about 15 minutes, and that cures the resin to completely hard finish. And then we can move on to assembly. Okay, and here is how they should look once they come out of the UV light. And you can see that it gives a nice glass-like finish. Personally, I prefer the buffed finish the best, but it's nice to see what they both look like. You can see the translucency there. But yeah, let me know in the comments which effect you prefer and which one you would use, or would you end up using both of them. Anyway, now we're going to assemble our earrings, and I've got two large jump rings, one middle jump ring, and a ear wire. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to open these large jump rings and attach them to the piece. And in the meantime, I just want to say, if you have any questions for the project, leave them in the comments below and I will answer them as soon as possible. And if you like the video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing, as I do videos just like this pretty much every single day. And also, if you have any requests, leave them in the comments below as well. I love anything you guys request me to make, and they do often end up as tutorials. So if you have any requests, be sure to leave them down below. But yeah, it's fairly easy to assemble this, and I'm going with gold, but this color could work just as well with silver. And yeah, this is pretty easy to do. Okay. And also, if you'd like to support the channel so I can continue creating videos like this one, please do consider becoming a member. There's a join button just below this video, or there is a link to my Patreon account where I post videos as well. They're a little more complex than the ones that I show on YouTube. Either one is a great way to support the channel and is greatly appreciated. So please do consider checking those out. And also, another way that you can support the channel is to check out my Etsy store, where I have things such as the cutters and the molds that I used today. That's also another great way to support the channel. And I do have a lot of cool tools on there. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. How close did I get? I will bring the, let me bring the stone over so you can see how it looks in comparison to these. There we go, and here is the stone. So these turned out a little greener than the stone, but as you can see, this one is pretty close. So that's something to keep in mind, as I said before, to consider the thickness of your piece. But yeah, that is pretty much it. I do hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. I did quite enjoy it. Also, another note, don't sleep on pearl white polymer clay for this, pearl white paint for this technique. It really does look fantastic. It's just really nice. I look forward to taking photos of this, so yeah. But yeah, that is pretty much it. I do hope that you enjoyed. I certainly did. And I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.